Happy Halloween. I bet you're wondering why I've gathered you here to... No, this is actually creeping me out. Hang on. Hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. It is 2 days until Halloween when this goes up, so I hope you're excited for the spookiest day of the year. I've already done a video about my spooky witchy reads that I wanted to do in the month of October. However, there is another genre that I would like to continue reading, and it's one that I really don't read very often, but the ones that I have read generally, I've always really enjoyed. So for this video, we are going to be reading one horror book and one thriller book, but I'm not just reading them. Oh no. We're reading them at night time. I am quite easily spooked, and I always get people say to me, how can you get scared by a book? Like, it's not like you're gonna get jump scared, like, ah! You know? I get that. It's a different kind of scare though. It's the kind of scare where it plays on your mind and it's something that you find yourself thinking about once the book is closed. It kind of gives you goosebumps, it makes your hair stand up. It's a different kind of scare. And I get it from both horror and thrillers, to be honest with you. Like, if I read the right thriller, it can still make me on edge. One of the books that I did read that made me feel so on edge was As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson. That is the third book in the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, but that book was eerie as fuck. That scared the life out of me when I was reading that. So, like I say, I want to do a thriller and I want to do a horror, and we're going to start off strong with the horror from an author that I've never actually read from before. And I'm sure, well, I know millions have, but it's time for me to delve into a Stephen King book. And I actually got this idea from Abigail's Cup of Tea on Instagram. If you don't follow her already, I adore her page, and she's actually just started up doing YouTube again. So again, there's a link to her channel in the description if you want to go check her out. I saw she was starting to read Stephen King herself a few weeks ago, and I don't know, it just kind of made me think, do you know what? If she's reading Stephen King, I can read Stephen King, because if you know Abigail, she is like a fairy and a human being, and putting her with a Stephen King book would just, like, I don't know, it's not something that I would have paired together. But obviously a girlie can read whatever she wants, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna go for Pet Sematary. This is meant to be his scariest book that he's ever written. I don't know where I saw that. It was somewhere online or something that I read that. I do enjoy the feeling of getting scared, because I just think it's so powerful when words on paper can make you feel a certain way, and that's when I know I'm gonna love a book, is if it elicits like really strong emotions from me, then I think that is clearly just really masterful writing. So yeah, I've had it a couple of times in the past with horror books that have really given me like the heebie-jeebies. So I'm really excited to get into this. Also nervous. One, Stephen King just really intimidates me. I think because he's just so known for writing obviously really scary horror books, but also quite thick, chunky books. And this doesn't look that thick or chunky, but girl, the font is so small, so I don't know how long this is going to take me, but I'm going to start reading it in the dark. I'm so scared. The only problem with that, although I've just realised logistically, is if it's dark, how am I going to see the pages? Probably going to have to bang out the reading light for that, but I think I might get cozy in the living room for now. Or do I want to stay in here? Maybe I want to stay in here. I'm going to find a spooky playlist, set the atmosphere, and we are going to start reading this book tonight. It's pitch black outside. I'm going to try and use minimal lighting without like straining my eyes, and let's get started. I have no idea really what this is about. As far as I know, a family moved to a new home, but they are situated right next to like a forest, and just weird stuff is happening, and that's pretty much all I know about this. I'm going to kind of go in as blind as I can. Emotional support. I am scared. This man has written so many books. You're kidding. When I'm asked what I consider to be the most frightening book I've ever written, the answer I give comes easily and with no hesitation. Pet Sematary. Oh, why am I so scared? know the album cover, so I'm turning the screen off. I'm fucking getting freaked out already. At like page 40 and the scene is really being set. This is going to sound really stupid, I was just saying it to my boyfriend because he knows what happens in this story. I think he's watched one of the films. I didn't realise this was actually based around a pet cemetery. Like, I don't really know what I thought that title meant. For some reason I didn't actually think it would be about a cemetery for pets of children and people. And I don't know how I feel about that. I don't feel very good about it. I don't. God, it is so humbling to see yourself in a mirror when you haven't looked in one for hours. So it's been a couple of days since I updated you guys on the crazy book that is Pet Sematary. I'm actually not that far through. There's not a massive amount I can tell you. I'm almost a quarter through, I think. I'm on page like 100 and it's 450 pages, I believe. So man, I fear I'm not even, well, I know that I'm nowhere near in the thick of what this book is going to cover. And I'm already so spooked to the point where I think I'm actually gonna have to force myself to not pick it up too close to bedtime. Like, I'm already, I think it's almost 8 p.m. now and I'm already thinking like, oh, should I be picking this up? It is so good though. Like, I just love it when books can get those reactions out of you. Like, this has had me chilled. Like, I've had chills on my arms reading bits of this book, but I can now give you a bit of an update as to what it's about. I mean, it's not far off what I've said, obviously, about a family moving into a new home. They get acquainted with their neighbours. They've got some elderly neighbours who tell them about this walkway that's kind of attached to their homeland. I feel like there was a bit that was saying they technically owned the woodland that was behind their house, technically, and there's a pathway anyway. And it leads to the Pet Sematary, which is where for decades and decades people have buried their beloved pets and put gravestones and whatever for them. Naturally now starting to find out, not quite as innocent as that might sound. Yeah, there's already been like a couple of chapters now where stuff's been really, really creepy, to the point where I was going to bed yesterday and my ring light tripod was at the bottom end of the bed, and I asked Ben to get rid of it for me because I just thought that if I saw that in the shadows of a night, even though I knew it was my tripod, I would think it's like a person standing there. And if you've read the book, then you can see the parallel there. Anyway, I am going to read a bit more of this evening. It's just so bingeable, to be fair. Like, if I didn't have work and have to worry about getting to bed, I could easily binge this. And that shocks me because I often saw people saying how they read this in like one sitting, maybe 2 sittings. And I thought, it's quite a big book. Like, that's some seriously dedicated reading time. But actually, now that I've read it, it goes by so fast. The chapters are so short and snappy. And like, because it is so gripping, I don't realise how quickly I'm actually reading the words. And before I know it, I'm like so many pages away from where I started. So I actually understand now how people binge this book. And I think I'm going to continue gradually getting through it this week. It's Wednesday today. But then as soon as we get to the weekend, I think I'm going to try my best to probably binge it. Saturday night I have plans, but the rest of the weekend I'm pretty free, and at least I don't have to worry too much about sleep because it's the weekend. So I'll just catch up on sleep during the day when I'm not working. I mean, I'm a complete horror novice. Like I say, I think I've only read maybe 2 others in the past, but this feels like a good horror book to me. I'm gonna read more tonight. I feel like I shouldn't read any more now because I won't be far off bedtime, but I have to know what happens and I have to know what everything means, like people that we've met so far in the book and just like things that have been discussed. I don't know, and I feel like obviously foreshadowing is massive when it comes to sort of like horrors or thrillers, and I just need to know the significance of everything. Like, I want to see how this unfolds and what it all means. So as you can see, it's very dark, so I'm still going to be reading this at a terrifying time, I might actually go and sit by my balcony doors where it is dark and yeah, get through some more of this with a blanket. But things just happened in the horror book where the main character is left on his own for a prolonged period of time. We know that doesn't end well. Something's brewing. I feel like I might know what. It's currently night time, as you can probably tell, and I've got just my ring light here to help me read because I'm finishing Pet Sematary. I literally have, I think, 50 pages maximum left. Thought I would sit in darkness to set the scene because shit's getting extremely serious right now. Footsteps on the stairs at night time. A stench. A shadow in the doorway. Oh, no, 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 no. Part 3. It is several days after I finished reading Pet Sematary because, man, I needed time. I needed time to mull this over. This was so scary, actually not in the way that a lot of people might think. And I don't know if you've heard this, I might have touched on it already, but people often say this isn't his scariest book just in terms of that like horror, mainstream scary. Demons, things that look scary, paranormal things that are happening. Not in that sense is this terrifying, but it's more the underlying message in a way that is so scary. It's kind of surrounding the lengths that people will go to cope with their grief, and like there's no boundary. It's so clever how this is done because it did still scare me in that horror way. It started off especially like really freaking creepy and it made me really uneasy before bedtime, and then it kind of lost that element of scare and then came into the other level of scare, if that makes any sense. I'm rating this 4.5. I feel like I don't know whether I just happen to pick up good horror books when I do pick them up, which is a very rare occasion, or whether my horror rating scale is just like extremely lenient, because I feel like most horror books I've read I've rated pretty high. Maybe it's just my brain chemistry, because they make me feel a very, very, very certain way, and when a book can elicit such strong feelings in you, I'm like, it's an amazing book. We all say it's just ink on paper, it's just words on paper, so it's pretty astonishing when it can make you feel so deeply in a certain way, and that's exactly what this did. It freaked me out. I was thinking about it when I wasn't reading it. I was like mulling things over in my head. It was making me question things. Stephen King just broke so many boundaries. He went there, you know, you're reading it thinking surely that's not going to happen. He goes there, he pushes them boundaries, and he really makes you think. He does tend to do quite a few filler chapters that feel kind of irrelevant, and I guess they stay kind of relevant. Like, there were definitely a few chapters in this book that I didn't need to read and the story wouldn't have changed like at all, but for the most part, like, he's very clever in the way that he's weaving things together, and he's foreshadowing, building up your care for these characters, learning more about them, their history, their backstory, their feelings about things. Yeah, I'm really raving about this, because not only did I love the way that Stephen King wrote it, the way that he's setting scenes, like I say, like his foreshadowing, his metaphors, his like personification of stuff, like I feel like I'm talking about a school essay, but he does it so well. There's still time to squeeze in a spooky season book, and if I didn't have so much going on, I easily could have devoured this in one sitting. I finally understand now how people say that they read this in one go, because it isn't a small book by any means, but God, it flies by so fast, and like my eyes are glued to the pages. I did attempt to look up some images from the film because I was like, oh, do I want to watch one of the films after? And I can't hack it. I see the images, I think I saw like 3, and then I swiped off and cleared my browser history because I was like, no. I think I can do horror books, but I'm not really a horror film girly. But yeah, I would massively recommend this. A lot of people do say it's also a great Stephen King book to start with because it's not like literally terrifying to read, but it's, yeah, definitely a conversation starter. This would probably actually be a really great book for a book club. Actual chills. The ending was insane. It almost reminded me of when you would like shake a like fizzy pop bottle and then obviously take the top off and it just explodes. That is really what the last half of this book felt like. It was just like so much build up after everything we've learned in the first half, and then in the last like 40 pages it just absolutely explodes. And it also ended not necessarily on a cliffhanger, but it's not resolved, and that's something that makes you feel so uneasy of horror books, and I see it all the time. Like, I have read horrors in the past where it has wrapped up and like it didn't bother me too much, but there is something really clever about the way that some authors decide to close horror books very unfinished, shall we say. Like, it's not like a major cliffhanger, but it's also not resolved. It's just, it lets your imagination decide how things would carry on from the ending. It's very interesting. Whilst it has been a few days and I feel like the creepiness has kind of come out of me and I feel like very refreshed and like I feel like I could maybe dive into another horror book. I don't have any horror books. I don't really have any specifically on my radar that I'm really in the mood to read, but horrors aren't the only things that scare me. And another genre that I don't ever really read is thriller, which I feel like can sometimes come under the same umbrella depending on what kind of thriller it is. And in a way, thrillers for me are scarier than horrors because like most of the time in a thriller, that shit is real life. Like, that could happen. So last year I finished reading the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. Absolutely ate it up, adored it. Holly Jackson is such a good storyteller. I decided to pick up 5 Survive. I still haven't read this yet, and this has been out probably for a year, right? It's been out for quite a long time. This is just a standalone. This isn't part of a series, but it sounds really interesting, and I very rarely read a book that takes place in such a small time frame. Basically, this book follows a group of friends who are going on a road trip in like an RV, and in the middle of the night they break down in the middle of nowhere, and it seems like a coincidence at first, but they quickly find out that actually there is a reason why they've broken down and they're in like mega danger. And from what I can gather, this book basically follows an hour-by-hour play of what happens whilst they're trying to figure out who's after them, what their motive is, and yeah, basically try and escape this horror that they found themselves in. I think this would be a really good one to do next. Obviously it's the middle of the day now, whilst it's a very gloomy day out. I still want to wait until the night time to read this. I've got a feeling this could be a really quick and easy read. The font's pretty large, and from memory Holly Jackson's quite a fast, snappy writer, so I think I'm going to get through this one really quickly. But it's been, I don't think I've read a thriller all year, like an actual technically classified thriller. I don't think I've done it, so this could be the first and the only thriller I read this year. We shall see. I've heard I haven't heard people like being obsessed with it, but I've heard people just really enjoying it, so I've got good feelings about this. But I will catch you later at night time to start this bad boy. Oh, this is cool, an RV map. So I'm on chapter 4 and we're just getting introduced to all the different characters. They've all got very different personalities, which I'm really enjoying. They're all pretty young. They're all like 17, 18 years old. So there's already like quite a lot of like banter between the characters. Also immediately off the bat, just notice how purposeful the writing is from Holly Jackson's perspective. There's certain words that she uses to just add elements of mystery. Red, our main character right now, is extremely mysterious. And there's like a lot of emphasis on the colour red at the moment, and I don't think it's necessarily because her name is Red. It has a lot to do with, I think, her past. We found out that her mother is dead. We have no idea how that's happened, but she seems pretty traumatized by it. So there's already so many questions, and yeah, it's definitely cemented the element of mystery straight away. So I just thought I'd do a really quick update. I'm still reading 5 Survive. I think I'm literally, on page 100. And literally until the last sentence I just read, I was kind of going to say that it's just not really doing it for me. As in, like, I don't know, I'm not really a thriller girly anyway. And I feel like it's got to be pretty messed up or like really intense really quickly for me to be invested, which I wasn't expecting this to be mega crazy because it is YA, so it's never going to be anything too wild. But still, from the way that Holly Jackson wrote A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, I thought to myself, maybe I will enjoy this. And literally, like I say, up until the sentence I just read, it was getting a bit boring for me. We've definitely established all the different personalities of the characters that we're following. Some of them are very likable, some of them not so much. So that's really interesting to see how that plays out. Kind of already getting a bit suspicious of some people, like, are they involved in what's going on? So I think I've told you, obviously, the group of characters are on their road trip, but someone's out to get them. They've shot at their RV and they're stranded. All of their tyres are punctured. They've got no fuel. So they're literally stuck in the middle of the woods with no service as well. And yeah, someone has been shooting at their RV several times, so naturally someone's out to get them. But yeah, I'm like questioning some of the characters in the RV, and I'm thinking, are you somehow like related to this? Are any of you involved? You know. But yeah, it was kind of getting a little bit boring for me up until this point. So maybe I was judging it a bit too quickly, but I do feel like, as I said, with thrillers, for me, if you're not getting into it really quickly, then it's kind of a bit redundant. Like, I don't need to know loads about the characters. I don't need to have a properly developed world or setting. I just need the tense, disturbed feeling of an atmosphere, and I just need like elements of mystery and intrigue, I suppose. But yeah, so we'll see. But it's not my favourite so far, but we'll see how it goes. But I'm still also admiring Holly Jackson's writing. I think the way that she writes and the words that she uses are so intentional, and I really appreciate that. Another evening, another pair of pajamas. That's what happens when you film reading spooky books at night video. Anyway, it's about time I updated you with my thoughts on 5 Survive, because I think I'm about to sit here and finish the rest of it. I've got 100 pages left to read. What am I thinking? I'm thinking it's still not wowing me, but I can appreciate it. I just don't think it's a book that I'm really gonna think about as soon as I've put it down. It is YA, so I feel like what I'm about to say is a bit silly of me because my expectations maybe should have been a bit different going into it. But then having said that, I picked this up because I loved the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series so much from Holly Jackson, and I feel like she pushed boundaries with those books being a YA. Like, some of the contents in those books for me was like really pushing the YA boundary. So I feel like going into this, maybe my expectations were more of an adult thriller kind of vibe, but then also, like I say, she's kind of gone beyond YA before, if that makes sense. Anyway, so what I want to say is this just isn't twisty and jaw-dropping enough for me yet. Don't get me wrong, we've still got a good chunk of the book left to go, and often there's like big reveals and twists and all sorts within those last few chapters. But I don't know, I feel like from the thrillers that I have read in the past, which is quite small, I haven't read that many, but I feel like it really has this good build of like suspense, and like there's something wrong from the beginning, but it keeps you intrigued and it keeps you guessing, and it just builds and builds and builds, and then eventually obviously you get your reveal or your crazy plot twist or something. What this book is giving me is it's not really giving me a general, I was going to say a general thing to build up to. Obviously we are, because we're trying to figure out who is trying to kill these kids. in the RV. But I just feel like it hasn't made me care enough about the storyline. Like, I really don't feel that invested about why. So maybe obviously that's the issue, because that is the main thing that we're trying to figure out in this book. But I feel like there's lots of other minor sort of plot twists that we're getting and like revelations, and I feel like it's like a revelation and it's a bit like, oh, okay, I didn't expect that, or that's kind of cool, that's kind of interesting, and then it would just flatline, and then it would just be this, like, this is how I feel like this book's going at the moment. Like, it's a proper like roller coaster kind of effect. I don't know, I just feel like I'll get a reveal and I'm like, oh, okay, actually this is getting fun, and then it kind of drops off again, and they talk about things that I don't care about. Obviously, being set within literally 7 hours, the entire book is pretty much set 7-8 hours, I think. There's not a lot of time to get to know your characters, and there's going to be a lot of dialogue because you're literally following a play-by-play of what's happening throughout the RV and the attack that they're under. But I feel like that's not an excuse for the book to feel boring. You know, there's got to be ways to kind of combat that. And for me, a lot of the dialogue that's happening in between the plot twists and the reveals is just a little bit mundane for me. I don't care enough about the characters to really get invested in what they're talking about with each other. I don't know. It's just not knocking my socks off, I suppose. And I'm finding it really hard to put it into words. It's just not giving me crazy thrill. But I hope that doesn't make me sound like I don't like it, because it is entertaining while I'm reading it. It's just not really keeping me hooked. You know, there's a couple of other questions that need answering, and I am interested to see what the answers are, but I'm just not pining. Like, I'll probably really be like, huh. I won't be like, oh my God. Do you know what I mean? It is Sunday night and I'm gonna finish this now, cozy up with a blanket, and it couldn't be a better Sunday, actually. I've also got Harry Potter on the TV. So am I gonna watch that more than read this? Maybe. We'll try not to get distracted. I have seen Harry Potter probably over 100 times, but you know. So it's a couple of days later since I finished 5 Survive, and I'm sure after my kind of up and down thoughts about this book throughout this reading vlog, it comes as no surprise that I've decided to rate this a 3 stars. For me, it's just an average rating for an average book. I don't think there's anything specifically wrong with this book, depending on how you classify, you know, or like how you like to rate your thrillers and the things that you're looking out for. I think this did have some suspense, it did have some plot twists, it had a bit of a character study, because I feel like thrillers do kind of require a little bit of character study to really understand people's thought processes and motives when, you know, performing certain actions. And I think this book did have all of that, but for me, it just didn't land the way that I wanted it to land, and it didn't all gel together in the way that I would have hoped. I think for me, the main issue, like I said, was the suspense and the plot lines just weren't really that interesting to me. They weren't something that I was really that intrigued about. And I also, by the end, decided that actually pretty much every single character in this book was either unlikable, like really unlikable, or just really flat and bland. And, you know, I've said it, we don't need backstories to every character. We don't need to know everything, you know, we want to get into the thick of the action. But you're literally spending 8 hours of time frame throughout this whole book with these 6 characters. You're almost trapped in that RV with them. There is nothing else to read about, nothing else to explore. You're purely following them and the way that they are going to escape this RV. So as there is obviously so much dialogue, because that is what you're following, it just makes it a lot harder to be happy doing that when you don't really like the characters that are involved, if that makes any sense. So that was a bit of a shame, because yeah, maybe if I had a bit more of a pull towards 1 or 2 of the characters, it would have made it a bit more enjoyable. But unfortunately, I just either didn't care about them at all, or I just did not like them. So, and as I also touched on before, the thriller formula for me didn't flow very well. It wasn't like a build up and a build up and a build up with little crumbs. It just felt like I kind of explained it like a bit like this. Things that I was a bit like, oh, okay, like they took me aback a bit would happen. I'd be like, oh, okay, maybe we're getting into something here. But those little moments would be sandwiched between much longer moments of just, like I say, the boring dialogue, spending time with characters I don't like or don't care about. And that's what I mean about it not flowing the way that I would have wanted it to have flown for a thriller book. So yes, it's not a bad book. And I think as well with thrillers, and bearing in mind this is a YA thriller, I think with thrillers, people do tend to have different expectations. And for me, knowing that this is a YA thriller, I do struggle to manage those expectations. As I said at the beginning of this video, or the beginning of reading this book, I've read certain YA thrillers that are really tame, and I've read certain YA thrillers that are quite brave with where they decide to go in terms of plot. So I find it hard to know if I'm going to be intrigued with a YA thriller or not, depending on what way the author decides to go. And normally with what I've read from the past, Holly Jackson's managed to still really keep me riveted, but this just wasn't one of those occasions, and that's okay. It wasn't a bad book, it just wasn't a fantastic book in my opinion. Yeah, that brings us to the end of this video. Honestly, definitely started out strong, and you know what, it's been since I actually read this for this vlog, this has spanned over quite a bit of time. I think I must have finished this maybe 2 weeks ago now, roughly. And I still think about this every single day, like actually every day. I might have to bump the rating up to a 5-star because I am so impressed at how this has just managed to worm its way into my brain and never leave. So if I didn't gush about this enough at the beginning of this video, here's just another reminder. This is an amazing book, and I really think that more people should approach Stephen King books more. They are intimidating. He has written so many books. A lot of them are scary, but he's a fantastic author. This definitely won't be the only book that I read from him. But yes, I hope you enjoyed this video and that it kind of got you in the spooky spirit. If you are watching this around Halloween, before Halloween, I hope you have the best time. It is one of my favourite days, and I feel like I'm at that awkward age now where I'm not young enough to obviously go out trick-or-treating, but I also don't have any young people in my life at the moment to go with. And that makes me so sad because I feel like I don't get to fully enjoy the actual day of Halloween. Like the build up and just the month of October in general is amazing. But I really miss the fact that on actual Halloween, nothing really happens for me. I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. Please like, comment and subscribe if you did. And I will catch you next week with a brand new video. Bye, friends.